All right, my clock says 12:02 because I'm on East Coast, and so we're just going to jump into it. Thank you, everybody, for coming and joining this joint webinar between Citrix and Pure Storage. We're going to be talking with some customers out there deploying Citrix solutions, deploying Pure solutions, and a little bit about the partnership between Citrix and Pure. And to start with that note, I guess I should first introduce myself. My name is Gunnar Berger. I work in the CTO office at Citrix. I will be the moderator of this panel, but I'm probably not going to talk a whole lot because I want to hear from customers, and I'm sure you do too, a lot more than you probably want to hear from me. So we're going to jump into it. Let's talk a little bit about what this webinar is about, and it starts with Citrix Ready. So I'm going to hand it over to Nieh from Citrix Ready to explain a little bit about what this partnership is. Nieh?
Hey, thanks Gunnar, and hello everyone. I am from Citrix Ready, and this webinar is part of our Citrix Ready technical webinar series, where we provide a platform for our partners to showcase our joint solutions. So to introduce myself, I'm Nieh. I work as a Citrix Ready technical marketing specialist for desktop ecosystem and manage the technical verifications around XenDesktop and XenApp. I'm often involved with Pure for various aspects of verifications, reference architecture, solution demos, ensuring its various hypervisor support, fast provisioning, thin provisioning, data duplication, mirroring backup, and so forth. So they're all flash array solutions is validated against the latest and greatest versions of XenDesktop. We collaborated in a number of other initiatives as well, such as VDI capacity program, where Pure could demonstrate its ability to surpass the storage performance expectations and also do that with a cost-effective design. And more exciting stuff coming up in 2016, thanks for our continuous partnership. Well, we'll hear more from our speakers in line today, so let me now hand it over back to Gunnar.
Thanks, Nieh. So what we're going to be talking to today, and I'd like to have each one of them introduce himself. Again, I've already introduced myself. I'm Gunnar Berger. I'm from the CTO office here at Citrix. I do a lot of stuff with our partners, which is why I'm here on a joint call with our partner, Pure Storage. But I also want to introduce, let's start with Kenneth. Kenneth, would you mind introducing yourself a little bit, introducing yourself?
Yeah, sure. This is Kenneth Wong, Senior Network Engineer for RPM Mortgage. We just recently deployed Pure Storage and Citrix XenDesktop a little bit over a year and a half.
Great. Well, Ken, we'll jump much more deep dive into what you're doing over at RPM later on in the presentation. Next up, we have Michael. Michael, would you mind introducing yourself?
Yeah, I'm Michael Thomason. I'm one of the chief technical architects at Emory Healthcare, predominantly over infrastructure, virtualization, and a lot of our clinical platforms. Been working really heavily the past year and a half, looking at next generation architecture to really kind of take our VDI to the next level. So we think we've achieved that and look forward to sharing it with you today.
Great. Thanks, Michael, and thank you both for joining us for the webinar today. Finally, we have Calvin at Pure Storage. Calvin, would you mind introducing yourself?
Absolutely. Happy to do so. This is Calvin Nieh from Pure Storage. I'm in product marketing here, focused on VDI. Very excited to be on the call here with you, Gunnar, as well as our two customers, Kenneth and Michael. They've got great stories, and I just can't wait to dive into the content.
Great. Thanks, Calvin. So, little ground rules as we jump into this. I see there's about 100 people here so far. There is a section somewhere in the GoToMeeting that allows you to ask questions. Over the next period, you're going to hear basically directly from Kenneth and Michael what they're doing. If you have any questions while they're talking, please drop them into the questions. I'm monitoring that as they're talking, and I will jump in and ask those questions throughout. So please feel free to use that. And with that, I want to hand it over to Michael. Michael, the next 15 minutes are yours, and I'd like you just to share whatever you want as far as your, Emory Healthcare and what you've done there. We've lost Michael. Michael, are you there?
Sorry, accidentally hit mute. Thanks everyone for joining today. I don't know if you're familiar with Emory Healthcare, but we're one of the largest healthcare providers in the Southeast region. We're an academic medical organization. Currently, right now, consisting of 7 hospitals at over 200 provider locations. So the challenge has always been how do we enable this mobile workforce that may be at various areas with roaming clinicians everywhere. How do we empower them with the same experience as if they were carrying around a physical desktop on their back? So we started this journey, and it really started in 2002. I joined here in 2004, and really doing some cutting-edge stuff. I mean, Emory was one of the first to deploy an electronic medical record, and the big driver for that is that medical record had to be able to follow you wherever the provider would go. So, initially it ran on top of a Citrix XenDesktop platform. So we were not new to the virtualization space. The challenge at the time was dealing with hardware and the lack of tools because the industry just had not caught up. So over the years, we continued to evolve our VDI platform, as did tons of other organizations. But as awesome as it was, and as much as the challenges it solved, it also brought a lot of other challenges with it. The support complexity, all the moving pieces, and at the end of the day, we had to look at, do users really like this? And then something happened so awesome about 2007 that really empowered the user, and that was Apple introduced the iPhone. For the first time, we started seeing, in 2008, we started seeing users have applications, and then we started seeing a cloud app. So users began to get to a point where they could install apps, they could deploy apps, and they could employ these types of services. So users become educated and say, now wait a minute, when I'm at work, my user experience is X, but it's so easy for me to do this at home. So this became a challenge. So how do you make this desktop evolve so that to the user it feels like something just as awesome as an app they downloaded from your iPhone? So we decided about a year and a half ago that we want to start over. So I got my team together, and we actually went to lunch. And one of the things, we set these tenets, and we said, forget everything we've ever known about VDI. We don't want to talk about storage or hardware. We want to talk about users. So a couple of our goals that we wanted to do is we wanted to replace our current, we were currently on Citrix XenDesktop 5. We were going through XenDesktop through full XenDesktop, and we have a lot of users that still run through Citrix XenApp. And the other thing we wanted to do is we didn't want users to know that they were running from the data center. We wanted them to feel like they were running on a desktop. And we wanted to simplify all layers of the stack so that it was so easy to support. It would reduce the complexity of all the support. So we had some incumbent storage that was running off XenDesktop and XenApp. So if you want to go ahead and go to the next slide. So I think the third one, Gunnar, and we'll go back to that one. So it's important to note that what I'll talk to you about today has worked well for our environment, but I can't say that it would work well for your environment. But I definitely want to share with you today some of the conclusions that we ran into. So the first question that we ask is really, what is a desktop? And to us, a desktop is a place where a user goes to work, and they want it to work in a consistent way. So we decided that when we deliver a desktop, we want to deliver it and make it the same way as a physical desktop. So we'll start with the user experience and work our way back. So we did quite a lot of look at all the tools and the complexity that it takes VDI. And one of the things we noted is that a typical desktop, for instance, one of the things that makes it successful is we've got 20-plus years of experience managing desktops. We've got things like Microsoft SCCM and all sorts of tools around supporting it. But then we were told when we went to these other virtualization platforms that we had to throw all that away. we had to throw all that away because we had limited processor, we had limited storage IOPS. And then if you look at a typical desktop, a typical desktop hard drive, depending on the one you get, can deliver the user about 170 IOPS per second. So the user is going to have quite a lot more IOPS, and then when they come in the data center, they may be constrained to 10 or 15 with common storage platforms. So we had to look at this and scratch our heads and think, so in the physical desktop, we have much more capacity to do work than we do in the data center. How can we bring this in the data center and do it at a price that is lower than a desktop and lower than we're paying today? And how do we do for complexity? So it was a big challenge to solve. And one of the things that we had to look at is, as we begin to think more, is what made, like for instance, if you take the 1980s car wars between America and Japan, it wasn't, you could argue that the American car industry made cars not at the same quality as the Japanese, and we had better, and the Japanese had better manufacturing. But at the core of it, what caused America to lose the car war in the 80s was because the Japanese figured out how to make their vehicles in half the number of parts. At the time, a typical American car consisted of 80,000 parts in order to build a vehicle. The Japanese, when they entered the car market, figured out how to build that same car with 40,000 parts, which in turn, based on their processes of manufacturing, was able to produce a much more faster car. So we realized early on we had to look at all layers of the stack. So we first started with, we wanted to take software off the table, hardware off the table. So the first thing we started with is hardware. We've got to get a solid hardware platform. So we looked at everybody. We looked at blades, we looked at blade management software, and really Cisco spoke very highly to us. What was powerful about the Cisco story is that we really could roll these domains in and power on blades and have them managed right out of the box and have firmware and all of the things that it takes to make it work. Then we went out and we looked at all VDI software out there. We looked at, we readdressed every player in the market and came to the conclusion that ICA, Citrix XenDesktop, is still one of the leaders. But the two problems we still had to solve is how do we get that true desktop experience? Because on a physical desktop, when I log in, my profile generally does not roam me. My data is there. If I go into Outlook, my search is there. And then in the middle of all of this, one of our requirements is, oh, by the way, we want to cut to Office 365. Well, when you cut to Office 365, you have to be able to cache your email locally to be supported. Users are going to want to be able to go to their desktop and do local integrated desktop search. And all of these things take IOPS and they take space. So we knew that we had to come up with a profile technology that when the users logged in, their data was there and it didn't copy up and copy down like most of the solutions today. So we looked at all the profile technologies and we chose FSLogic profile containers. One of the cool things about FSLogic profile containers is we were able, the moment the user logs in, it mounts a VHDX on a Microsoft scale-out file server, and the user data, the user profile is there. It's not copied up, copied down. It's as if the user was there. But then we had, so this was awesome. So we have this, amazing hardware platform. We have an amazing software stack. Where are we going to store this user data? And how are we going to scale this out? So we said, well, we want all SSD. Well, when you look at SSD, you start getting into price. So we probably looked at over 12 different storage vendors, from small players to big players. And there was really only one that, to me, shared the story that met our use case, and that was Pure. And it was for a couple of reasons. One is Pure was one of the only providers at the time that shared our vision that if we have to have any spinning disk, we failed. Not only that, Pure said when we start our storage platform, because SANs, if you look at Pure and all the other players, SANs are nothing more than software that runs on top of a bunch of drives. And Pure, almost all the other players on the market, never took their spinning disk software that's optimized for spinning disk and made it work for SSD. Pure is one of the first, and currently one of the only ones that said, we're writing our software for SSD first, and that's where we're going, and that's what we're going to do. So Pure, what's exciting about Pure is that the entire platform was designed for SSD. So you get things like 512 byte dedupe. You get things like inline encryption. You get things like 2-hour installs. We literally rolled the storage array in, and within 2 hours, we were booting up VMs and running workload off of it, all at sub 1 millisecond latency. So this infrastructure, these three, have done a couple things. One is we're getting 3 to 4 times faster logins. We've been able to provide the user with a desktop experience that they can't really tell they're not on a desktop. And I knew that we had made it when I, who's not typically a fan of VDI, was doing work one day, and I thought I was on my local desktop, and I was actually running in VDI, and that's when I kind of made me smile. I knew we were on something. We've been able to take our focus away from the infrastructure and all the moving pieces, because we're with standard architecture like VMware for a hypervisor, like Citrix for XenDesktop, Pure, and Cisco. These come together in an ecosystem called FlashStack, which means it simplifies our support model. So we really only have to place one support call to get all the players involved. Well, what this has done is allowed me to use reference architecture to bring in experts when needed to help and focus more on providing the end user experience than being down in the weeds of hooking up storage and blades, because users never see that. They never see all the work that goes on behind the scenes. They see the end product. And the more time and energy we can put on the end product, and the more passion we can put into that, the better the end user experience is going to be. One of the things that we're truly excited about on top of all of this is Cisco and NVIDIA are lining up to do GPU offloading. So we feel like, based on some of our early tests of the NVIDIA chipsets, that we're going to be able to do true inline video. We've tested this. We've tested viewing radiology image and running videos and training videos in YouTube through using the NVIDIA GPU offloading. And in some of the experiences, it's actually faster coming out of the data center because you're able to render these graphics using these NVIDIA chipsets. So we feel like this is going to be our next-gen platform. I have to say that as we roll this out, we've almost had no problems with our infrastructure at all. And all of our focus has been on tweaking what the user sees, and that's providing what we call DLE, which is our desktop-like experience. We're in the process now of migrating over to Office 365, and users are loving it because they have their full Outlook, their full cache, their desktop searching, and to the user, they have plenty of IOPS. So we've been truly excited, especially with the data reduction rates that we've gotten on Pure. It's been truly an exciting place to be.
Thanks, Michael.
That's all I have.
I'm sorry, what's that?
I think that's all I have for you today.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. Appreciate it. So I have a couple questions for you that have come up as you've been talking. One, you said that you're doing in a physical desktop, you said between 100 and 170 IOPS. Was that the bare minimum of how you considered how you should deploy the IOPS for a virtual desktop? And how did you go about making those decisions?
So when you look at IOPS, you have to look at density that you're going to get per user and kind of estimate, is really a user going to tax 170 IOPS at one time? So we raised the bar and said we wanted to give each user 170 IOPS. I'd have to look at our calculations and see where it might be. It may be like 80 or 90. But at the end of the day, we're still at like sub 1 millisecond access time. I mean, we're copying, into the desktop like 2 gig files in 3 or 4 seconds. I mean, it's unbelievable. And if those files have dedupe blocks, it even lowers the time.
Yeah, I mean,
so it's not just IOPS, because there's a lot of software that goes on top of Pure that makes all that stuff behind the scenes. So we've been able to reduce we don't really have to have a lot of performance tuning things into VDI based on the Pure array that we have.
That's great. I love, I was just personally talking, I absolutely love how you start with user experience. In my experience, that has been the #1 failure in VDI projects. It's not even technology and the ability to give good user experience. It's been more the focus of building a good user experience. As I've said internally at Citrix numerous times, and I've said on Twitter numerous times, if you're not focused on user experience, your project will fail. Users are used to physical desktops. I love the fact that you looked at 100 to 170 IOPS, right? You're talking about this is the experience that people are used to. Whereas I've seen many tools out there that say, hey, you're only using 5 IOPS. And so people architect with that in mind. And that's just not the way the real world works. People want a new computer to be faster and better. And I think you're running, you're using Pure, you're all, it's all flash, it's all, fast as fast can be. You should be able to deliver a better user experience in the physical desktop. So I'm excited that was your approach.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that. One of the things that's also exciting about this is that we now can manage VDI just like we do. We can use our standard tools that we've been managing the desktop and use standard resources to manage the desktop just like we did in the physical desktop world. It also empowers persistent desktops, because if you think about it, a persistent desktop is just a desktop in the data center. So we have plenty of I/O, and with data dedupe, we could literally create, persistent desktops for everybody and just patch them with SCCM and manage them just like regular desktops, because that's all a persistent desktop is. So this stack not only can work for persistent, but also non-persistent. And we've decoupled the user data with standard tools.
So one question we have from Peter is, how is the internet response on VDI desktop? Is it as fast as the desktop? Not quite sure how I read that question, Peter, but I think you're trying to just say, it's like, what's the overall user response to this thing when they're using it locally versus over WAN? That's how I'm going to interpret your question, Peter.
So that's actually a good question. So when you're running this over a WAN, obviously bandwidth and latency and those type things come into play, and they're things that we deem are in our control and not out of our control. So we can't control if someone has dial-up internet, or we can't control if someone has a Comcast cable issue. But what we can have in place are the right tools. So if a user does come in and a user calls in with an issue that their session may be hanging or freezing at home, or their logon times are slow, we owe them the ability quickly to tell them, here's what we think it might be and here's where you need to go. And we've done that with a lot of layers of our stack. We're able to slice down the logon times and graph out down to literally individual we can tell you how long an individual GPO takes to process. So we've been able to leverage things like, so for that one we're using Uber Agent. We're using a lot of the Citrix tools for NetScaler to determine, if you're having any kind of WAN issues involved. So to me, there's things you can control and can't control. The internet is one of those things you may not have control over, but you do owe your ability to have insight into those areas.
What hypervisor are you using?
VMware.
VMware.
So we looked at all hypervisors. Our top two was Citrix XenDesktop and VMware, only for the fact that we are eventually going to do the GPU offloading, and Hyper-V is still lacking in this area. VMware gave us a lot of the management and the reliability that we were looking for. And when you combine VMware with Cisco, there are some amazing things you can do. So for instance, we use a technology called VMFX. So we buy, for all of our network traffic, goes directly out, never touches the hypervisor. So we're able to reduce our processing cycles by not having to take network traffic through the hypervisor. And as hardware continues to keep up, density in the data center, it's only going to get better, guys. as things evolve, it's only going to get better. So the time to change our thinking is now.
Okay, so since you're using vSphere, there's multiple ways to use a GPU within vSphere. Are you using vGPU or using their VSGA or VDGA?
We're using vGPU.
vGPU, so you're using the NVIDIA stuff. No one's asking this, but I want to know, are you on their first version of the grid, or did you get to the grid 2.0?
We tested on the first version. We're rolling out our platform now, and then we're going to add, so we call our platform DLE, which is desktop-like experience, and then we are going to introduce DLE-G this summer. We were waiting on some cost reductions for NVIDIA that we hope to see coming out soon, and I believe they've made a couple of announcements. And we hope to get GPUs on blades, and then at that time, we'll probably look at the 2.0 version of the grid.
Okay. Andrew, if you can ask your question again in the questions, and I'll get back to it towards the end. I'm going to move on so we can get to Kenneth. So thank you, Michael, for your time. If you wouldn't mind sticking around for the Q&A at the end. So thank you so much.
I just want to make sure to remind everybody to test in your own environment and evaluate other conclusions as well.
Thanks, Michael. So next up is Kenneth from RPM Mortgage. Kenneth, if you want, the next 15 minutes is yours.
Hey guys, thanks. Yeah, so I've been with RPM Mortgage for about 10 years now. Just got my Rolex. Yeah, we have an interesting issue with our environment. We've been using Citrix XenApp for the longest time, ever since I've been with the company. XenApp 6 from 5.0 to 5.5 to 6.5. And we have been always have the similar issues where users have slow experience in Citrix, or do we have to reboot servers and such. About a couple of years ago, our company had to move into our new loan originating system, and that system is based on the Flash technology. So on our current environment, we're all Dell shop. So we have Dell PowerEdge and Dell Logic some storage array before, and users can get by working in there. The average login time every day is ranges from 2 to 3 minutes to 10 minutes, depends on the load on the server. So when we got our new LOS program, and we tried to load it on our current Citrix XenApp 6.5 platform, it was slow as a snail. It was not adequate. It was very bad. We had a lot of users complain. Management was not happy, and they needed us to get this issue resolved. So I went up to management and told them that our current infrastructure is not, it was not scalable. It's not adequate to do what we need to do. So we went and gathered all the vendors and talked about restructuring our infrastructure. So we went out from Cisco to Dell to other vendors, either for blade system and server solutions, and then we went to look for storage. We first look at standard solution, standard SANs, traditional SANs solutions like Nimble, NetApps, even Ecologics and Compellent and Nutanix and stuff like that for Flash. And we came out with Peer, and we looked at Peer solution and looked at their product. We liked it, and we did a little testing on it. We called several of their customers and found that it was a solution for us. So after several months of deployment, we got XenDesktop loaded into Cisco UCS system that's connected to a Peer, and we also have the core switches and Cisco N5K, and everything's 10 gig. And the user's experience has tremendously improved. We have some pain in the beginning with the setup and configuration, but after that, everything has been running smooth sailing with our product. Users are logging into Citrix. It takes less than 30 seconds really nowadays. The only issue they have is that they occasionally have to reboot their VDI image. So yeah, so Peer Storage has really improved our environment a lot. So far we're deploying about over 1,000 something VDI images on the peer itself, and have about 20 Citrix servers loading onto on the peer storage, and we're not even using half of the storage on it right now. We're using about 1.7 terabyte out of 6.3 terabyte available, and the IOPS every day that we're using, this average IOPS of less than 10K really. So I mean, I look at our peer storage right now at a full load. Everyone logged in, we're only using 3.8 thousand IOPS right now. So it's not definitely not a big issue with our performance. We'll do it.
So Ken, I see on the screen here it says that you're doing 1,000 XenDesktop users. Let me ask a question, kind of going back in time. What was the original reason why you went to XenDesktop? Not just XenDesktop, but just VDI in general. What was your decision point there?
Oh, so well, we look at a Zen app at that point, and we're looking at, when we're trying to run our OS on a Zen app, it's not running. It's on a flash, so we couldn't get enough CPU and memory performance for that application to run it smoothly for the users. So we tested it. We did a POC on a XenDesktop. At first, we looked at VMware's a view, but then at that time we're already at Citrix Citrix shop, and we want to just do an upgrade on Citrix for XenDesktop would be more economical choice. So that's why we went with XenDesktop. And we did a POC with that application, with dedicated memory and CPU to that one user running that desktop, and it works flawlessly. It runs smoothly in that environment. So that's when we decided that XenDesktop is the way to go.
So the slide says that you reduce your maintenance window. Can you dig into that a little bit more? I mean, how has going to this type of solution, be it Pure, Citrix, whatever, how has that changed the way that you manage your environment?
Previously, with the Zen app, doing maintenance like updates and software installation, we had to do a manual work since we don't have really a software deployment solution at that time for it. So we have about 60 to 70 Zen app servers. So we have about 2 engineers logging every night, once a month for a couple of weeks just to updating the servers. And it's getting cumbersome. And also, when we, with a Zen app, it's also a shared environment with multiple users in one server. So if one user starts using more memory and CPU, it affects other users. And when sometimes if we need to reboot, that they take out a bunch of users in order to reboot the server. So with XenDesktop, it eliminates all those issues. With and the user's experience has improved tremendously. That it seems like it's the right choice at that time as well. With the VDI XenDesktop, all we have to do is just update the gold image. We only have three gold image, so we just update that, push it out, and users get the new image, and they're okay, and they're just running from there. Another thing that we like about the XenDesktop is that the non-persistent. So every night we reboot our VDI, and it comes back to its original state. So users try to install anything in there or get infected with a virus, we reboot the VDI, come back to its original state, and a clean machine every time they log in.
Cool. You have a lot of questions on the backup queue. If you don't mind, I'd like to start asking a couple of those. So some of these are pretty easy. What version of Citrix are you running?
We're running a XenDesktop 6.5 at the moment, and we're currently planning for the upgrade to XenDesktop 7.6.
Great. How are you currently managing your user profiles?
We're actually using a Citrix Universal Profile Manager for managing our profiles. So we do a kind of a streaming profile into a Citrix desktops.
Great. This one, I don't know if you remember off the top of your head, but do you know your specific CPU RAM configuration you're using?
For each XenDesktop, we're giving about 4 CPUs per XenDesktop and 8 gigs of RAM.
I'm also trying to type it in the same time there. On the XenApp side, hold on, let me just read this out loud. What were the specs on each XenApp server versus what is being provided to the typical? Okay, so you already answered the VDI side. You said 4 CPUs or 8 gigs of RAM. Do you still run XenApp servers? And if so, what are those? What's the configuration of that look like?
XenApp server, we currently have 2 XenApp servers on 7.5, and they are with also with 8 CPUs and 16 gigs around each servers. So those applications, XenApp 6 right now, are we using this for? I'm sorry, XenApp 7.5, all we're using that for is really for one-off applications that we don't need to install in the VDI environment. Something that's very specific just for a couple of users. So that's what we installed them for.
What operating system are you using for XenDesktop? Windows 7, 8, 10?
No, Windows 7. Yeah, XenDesktop is Windows 7 at the moment.
Okay, I'm going to get to some of mine. There's still more in there. I'll get to the other ones, but I want to. Those are very specific questions, which are helpful. I want to ask more of a generic question here. How have your users responded to everything that you've done with this XenDesktop plus Pure solution?
Initially, they responded, during the POC process, they're very happy. They're like, once they got on, they didn't want to get off the VDI environment. They love it a lot. And then later on, when we fully deploy it out, it's not really a pure Citrix issue. It's probably a planning issue. When we first deploy out, we didn't configure everything to properly. So there were some profile issues, but after the first couple of months of pain of setting it up, having users getting used to the environment, it was smooth sailing after that. So I would recommend that proper testing and configuration during your deployment would help a lot.
So I know earlier on when you were discussing, you said that you called some customers, or it wasn't maybe customers, but other people that you knew in the field about what storage you should use, and you said you got more of a recommendation for Pure. Was there more involved in that process in how you chose Pure over, let's say, traditional or legacy storage?
Basically, we look at one of the this Pure's austere all SSD solution. That's a very attractive. That's what we're looking for. And the most attracting point for choosing Pure is the compression and deduplications. We look at the compression ratios and the dedupe that it can offer. So the only thing we need to validate with your other customers is it really does a good job at compressing as it was stated. So after they assure us it is as advertised, we went ahead with Pure.
Did you look at anybody else? Did you kind of head-to-head bake off?
Oh yes, we looked at your solution, the Pure solution, and also Nutanix solution, where it's more of a all-in-one box, where they have the ESX running off the ESX. Actually, their SAN software is running off of the ESX host, so it's built in one big shop. So we see an issue with that is that once you buy that, you have to keep on getting that. You can't use any other solution with it, like Cisco or any other Blaze system with it.
So I'm going to wake Michael up for this question. It's for both you and Kenneth. We're getting a lot of questions that are very specific into your configurations. So this question just came up. I'd love it if both of you guys could answer for me. Is which model of the Pure array and number of shelves are you using? And Kenneth, if you mind going with yours, and then Michael, I'll go to you.
We currently have, I'm trying to remember, rather than 2 shelves. And I believe we have, I'm trying to remember which model it is on top of my head, since it's one of those plug-in and you don't have to worry much about it solution. But I'm trying to remember which pair of array storage. Maybe Michael can go ahead while I'm trying to remember what that is. I'll look it up on my management array here.
Sure. We have a FAS 450 with 4 shelves with 40 terabytes raw.
Thanks, Michael.
And based on the dedupe and compression, it's just been phenomenal what we've been able to achieve.
So follow-up question there is, so you can use other solutions with Pure. And Nick, I'm not 100% sure, but I'm just going to ask it the way he said it. He says, so you can use other solutions with Pure. I think he's looking for a kind of a statement that you can blend Pure with other environments, with other storage solutions. Is that what you're going for, Nick? Is if you can do blended, or if you have to kind of have Pure be everything? Correct. So that's what Nick's looking for. He's just asking, is your storage solution Pure and Pure alone, or are you using Pure and then you mix it in with other stuff as well?
For us, on the RPM side, we did mix it up with a Nimble as well.
Okay.
The reason is it's cost. It's based on cost. If I can do it over again, I'll probably do every single pair. But unfortunately, management only gave us a certain budget. So we got a small Nimble array just for the non-high heavy performance VMs in there.
Well, it's a good testament for Pure that you'd, if you could do it over again, you'd do it all on Pure. That's a good testament. The Pure guys have to at least smile at that one. Let's get over to Pure, because I think some of these questions that are starting to come more specific to Pure, and we'll circle back around. Keep asking the questions. There's tons of them on the board. I will get to them. But Calvin, if you have some, if you can unmute, I'd like to hand it over to you and kind of walk through these more Pure specific questions that we're getting, and just let you share a little bit more about your ecosystem.
Great. Thank you so much. It's awesome to hear things directly from our customers, and a lot of it is really aligned with kind of what we tell customers all the time about what we do for VDI, and I think you guys all said it better than we could ever, right? The all-flash performance and the ability to provide kind of non-disruptive upgrades, whether it's software or hardware, that's really kind of the key behind providing the best end-user experience, which is what everybody here on the line and probably those listening in really want to do. The data reduction that was mentioned by both Michael as well as Kenneth, for VDI, it really depends on the workload, right? Database, you're going to get a different data reduction than you would get for VDI, but very typical with VDI workloads that we see, upwards of 10x data reduction, which means when Michael said, he's got 40 terabytes of raw storage on his Pure array, he's getting a lot more usable in terms of storage versus just the 40 terabyte. And that's not the case with a lot of our competitors. Either they don't get as good a data reduction rate, or in some cases they can't even provide, if you look back at some disk-based stuff, it's going to be even less than the raw that you have. Management simplicity, I think that was pretty evident in terms of, a lot of times VDI deployments with Pure, customers are not even using kind of an additional storage administrator to manage their storage. It's actually done by some of their VDI administrators, and we can let Ken or Michael address that, or affirm or say that they do things differently. But from other customers, we always see that quite frequently actually. The other thing is, and I'll show you in a slide coming up, but VDI typically comes in as a deployment where you've got a pilot or a smaller group of users to start with, and then you grow into a larger production number, or you grow it across your company. And what happens is VDI on other solutions may be able to address that smaller group or that pilot number. And then when you scale it up, that's when things can get, where other storage solutions may tip over. And with our non-disruptive operations, you can completely scale up that system without impact to users, right? Everything in the system is fully redundant. If you're adding capacity with shelves, if you need to upgrade your controllers, you can do so, and all without any impact to performance or to users. Gunnar, can you move us over to the next slide? One thing that I wanted to cover is kind of our single architecture. So talking about, you know, that ability to scale from pilot to scaled deployment, there were mentions of different model numbers. We introduced the FlashArray//M portfolio this year, totally upgradable from the previous, based on our previous models, based on our Forever Flash kind of business model, which we'll talk about. But whether you're starting at hundreds of users or going up to thousands of users, whether you're just doing VDI or if you're also consolidating other applications or adding databases, we've got a full, you know, kind of portfolio here that, again, each one of these models from the bottom to the top is upgradable non-disruptively, so that, you know, you don't have to buy a huge system in order to prepare yourself for growth when you're starting out small, right? So you can kind of scale your purchase and add it as you want it. It was also mentioned our FlashStack Converge infrastructure. So with Citrix Ready and with the Citrix validation program, we have a FlashStack Converge infrastructure that, you know, we've done all the testing. Citrix has done some validation for us, and we've published design guides and reference architectures to really make it easy for customers and their partners to deploy FlashStack in a full, you know, both server, storage, and networking in a single integrated system. So that's something to consider as well. Gunnar, the next slide, please. I definitely want to get to some questions. I'm just going to highlight our evergreen storage model. So with traditional storage vendors, you know, there's this kind of, you purchase for your project, you deploy, and then, you know, 3 or 4 years down the line, you're looking at, gosh, I've outgrown it. I've got different requirements, heavier requirements. The older system is something that now I need to upgrade. And typically that's a forklift upgrade, right? You've got new models, you've got new processors, et cetera. Pure chose to tackle this really differently with an evergreen storage model, which means really, you know, it's much more of a subscription model. So as long as you've purchased and continued to pay for our, you know, flat and fair maintenance pricing, every 3 years we will upgrade your controllers for free. So what that means is 7 to 8 years, maybe even 10 years down the road, your, you know, quote, 10-year-old Pure Storage flash system is really only as old as the last time you did an upgrade. And again, you're doing that all non-disruptively. So the TCO, you know, from a maintenance, from a purchase, from a support perspective, really is lower compared to a lot of our competitors. And it's just a different way of treating customers that I think, you know, our customers really appreciate. Gunnar, I think the last slide, I think we kind of covered this. VDI is, you know, a great workload for all flash, virtualizing many different applications, you know, databases, people put their ERPs on there. Just being able to consolidate everything into an all-flash array is something that we've strived to do, and I think Kenneth mentioned that, you know, they're putting more workloads on there. If he had his choice, that was a great plug. It made us smile in the room here. You know, he'd do it all on Pure as well. But let's move on to any other questions that there might be for Pure. So Gunnar, if you have some teed up.
Hey, Calvin, can I just add one thing really quick?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I want everybody to understand that the future, especially on VDI for user profiles, is not streaming data, because the data is getting bigger and bigger. For example, for Office 365 and Outlook, you may have a 2 or 3 gig cache. So the data of a user is getting bigger and bigger to the point that streaming is not going to be, is going to become mainstream in a very short time frame. And when that happens, you have to start looking at all of these other hyper-converged solutions and all of these other solutions, and they're not a fit. That's what drove us to Pure. We needed somewhere where we could put big user data for VDI, but that could also drive big data for Oracle workloads, and that's what we found in this. And the last thing I will say, based on our experience only, everybody has to make their own experience, you know, Pure makes a lot of claims in the sales process, and we were very quick to try to research each one of those, and it was really exciting to see. Everything we were told in the pre-sales process panned out in the post-sales process. So you know, I can say that we're definitely excited about the solution.
And you're definitely not being paid to say that, right, Michael?
I am. No, absolutely, because what drove us to you was based on our requirements for what we needed to accomplish. That's the amazing thing. In fact, you know, we were a big NetApp shop at the time, and you know, ultimately looking at resources and maintenance, we would have probably preferred to stay ENC and NetApp. But we needed something that met the use case.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you, Michael. It's just my humor, you know, guys, anyone out there. So yeah, I have a lot more questions I want to get to in kind of a lightning round as we wrap up this thing, because there are people who have been very patient waiting for a couple of these questions to be answered. So Michael, Ken, please unmute. Here we go. So one question I've been dying to get answered has nothing really to do with Citrix or Pure, but it's a good question nonetheless. What are you using for your thin client solution? How are your people connecting into their VDI desktops? Ken, if you wouldn't mind sharing first.
Sure. For thin clients, we actually tested the Dell WiseBox with their CCM. Pretty much you configure over the cloud, and those WiseBox you just plug and play. Basically, you're on your. Hello.
Do you know what series Wise you did?
Yeah, that the WiseBox, like, it's the TOS version, which is clientless one. I'm trying to remember which one it is. They call it the Wise have the.
Thin OS.
It's not. Yeah, it's a thin OS. It's a clientless one.
Okay.
Basically, it's just all you do is on the TCP, just put a option in there to point where your cloud web address is at, and it'll either that or the FTP server, and it'll automatically download the configuration on the WiseBox, and it works flawlessly. We have no issues with it. We have deployed that out. And the other thin PC that we work on is the Windows thin PC. That is been tested, and we're deploying that to all our branch offices out there. And
great.
That's So
thanks, Ken. Michael.
We've been down the thin client route and the zero client route, but at the end of the day, it really limits you, in my opinion, on where you can go. So for us, it's been safer, you know, especially as first come down. You can get these desktop PCs now that really are thin clients, and you can lock them down. So typically what we've been doing currently is everybody's like a thin PC or just a Windows 7 image, and you can use some software like XenDesktop to lock the box down to go directly into the Citrix session, and that's worked well. Plus, Receiver and the other platforms write first for Windows. And if you look at some of the other zero clients, when you start getting into troubleshooting like wireless stacks and so forth, the tools just aren't there to troubleshoot. Plus, you already have resources that are trained to use Windows, so we've chosen to stay with a Windows-based platform for our front end.
That's interesting. So I used to work at Gartner, and I wrote an entire paper. If you have access to Gartner's papers, you could pull this up. But Windows, you're absolutely right. The Windows environment, even if it's a Windows thin client, that's where all the cool bells and whistles come in. That's where DirectX redirection comes in, or if you have Skype for Business redirection, all that kind of stuff typically you see on the Windows environment. First, you just have to secure it, as you say, and I think you're using Desktop Lock, it sounds like, then, which is
No, we're using XenDesktop.
Oh, XenDesktop. Oh, okay. So it's another version out there. Cool. Well, that answers that one. Let's get to the next one. Do you have just one golden image for XenDesktop or more than that? If you have more than one, what are the challenges of having more than one? We'll start with Michael this time.
So currently right now we have one minus some persistent desktops. And for the persistent desktops, we manage those just as we do our standard desktops today with Microsoft SCCM, because we have the IOPS and we just do the pushes. We've been able to also leverage our vendor FS Logic So one of the things that's reduced our image platform is we've used FS Logic. So that's allowed us not to do app virtualization because you come into a lot of support issues with app virtualization. What FS Logic does is you can create hiding rules and reset rules, and you basically can say when this user logs in, they'll get reader, and when this other user logs in, if they have a license for it, they get pro, but it's not virtualized. So we've been able to leverage that technology and really reduce our images down to 1.
Kenneth?
We have about three images, one for standard branches, one for our accounting platform, and one for testing. It just make life a little bit easier that way for us at least. So any standard application, we're pretty cookie cutter in a way for that. That's all our users use a standardized set of applications. So updating those 3 images are no challenge at all. You could do it during the day and publish it out at night. So
great. My next question goes to Calvin. Calvin, can Pure Storage devices offload data to Amazon or Azure? Also, does Pure take care of replication and backup?
Great question. So we have the great thing, one of the really cool things about what Pure does is all of the kind of enterprise software capabilities, replication, snapshotting, the data reduction, all of that actually comes with the purchase of your Pure solution or Pure Array. There is no additional licensing that we do that requires customers to go, I really want that feature, but I got to pay extra for that capability. So it all comes when you purchase your Pure storage. From an AWS or Azure perspective, there are customers who are looking at that and doing some of that kind of work. We actually have some testing underway on that. That's definitely something that we're looking at, making sure customers who are interested in that are able to do. And so I think, kind of stay tuned on that front.
Okay, I'm right at the end. I want to squeeze in one more question, even though we have 3 more. But I want to ask, this is for either Michael or Ken. How long did it take for you to implement your new solutions in order to come over the challenges?
So I think so for us, since we started with everything new platform, new architecture, some of the tools that we've had to write ourselves, for some special use cases. So we're about 1.5 years in. But now, had we had a lot of those pieces in, so the Pure was, a 2 or 3 hour install. The UCS, the most time for us has been really focused on getting the user experience right. The infrastructure probably could have in place in a month and be done.
Yeah, desktops would take a while. Kenneth, what about
Pure being and Pure has been like 0.001% of the implementation. I mean, we spent like no thought on storage at all. I mean, it's just been amazing.
That's great. 4 years ago was a different story. Ken, any final words? We're at 1 o'clock here.
Same thing with Michael. Our deployment, is primary because we renew our entire infrastructure. So it took us about just 3 months to get everything configured and set up right, but it took us about 5 months just to have all configuration dialed down. So I do like to mention one thing that we didn't mention before is that the Pure support for your Pure array is very flawless. It's pretty much you don't really need any technical hands-on for that. They will contact you to do an upgrade, and they will do all the upgrades. So all they do is just email you and say we need to reboot it, and there's no downtime. So I just want to put that in there because we done it about 3 or 4 times the Pure upgrades for our software already, and it's flawless every time.
Well, thank you, Ken. So we are.
I think my quick conclusion to this is, if you really look, there is a lot changing now in VDI. In VDI, for the first time, all the pieces are together so that you can get the cost structure right, the hardware right, the support right, and the storage right. And if you assemble these pieces together, you can finally come up with something that is consistent, repeatable, reliable, and that makes for a great user experience. So in reference to Steve Jobs, think different.
And on that note, thank you, Michael. Thank you, Ken. Thank you for that ending. Gives me a great way to wrap. Thank everyone for joining us today in this webinar. I'm sure these things are recorded and you can watch later. But Calvin, I'll hand it over to you for final words.
I couldn't have said that better. Honestly, that was great. I think, thank you so much to all of our guests today, to Kenneth, to Michael, and to Gunnar for doing a stellar job with the Q&A and moderating. You can learn more at purestorage.com. We also, of course, have content that you can look at on Citrix Ready's webpage. There's a Pure Storage page there. And upcoming in the middle of March, we have our first Pure Accelerate user conference. There's promises to be a lot of great content, some amazing speakers, and a great time as well. So if you're interested in that, just go to purestorage.com. You will see the Accelerate messaging and registration links on the front page. Thanks, everybody, for attending. This has been really awesome, and I hope it's been just as valuable for our listeners as it has been for me.